Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. I am your host, Chris M. Walker. You may not know that because it's been over 4 months since my last video. Wow, I'm really sorry about that. Some of the stuff I'm going to talk about today will help understand why it's been that long, but that said, we're going to start putting out a little bit more of those. I hope everybody had a great Christmas if you celebrated, or a great holiday season, and you're looking forward to a new year, which starts in 2-3 days. I don't even know what day it is. And I thought this would be a good time to reflect on some of the things that I've done in 2018, some of the things that I've learned and will continue to implement in my business and life going forward. And hopefully some of you can benefit from it as well. There's going to be a lot of general business lessons and things like that I've learned that I think will be really helpful to you. Some of you may find that a touch on the boring side, or it may be old news to some of you, but I think it's really important. And then there's going to be some talk about how I've changed the way I do my SEO as well. So without further ado, let's dive into it and get started.
So you want to be a rock superstar and live large, big house, 5 cars, you're in charge.
So these are not going to be in any particular order or anything like that. It's just as they came to me as I was putting this together. That said, this is the big one. This is what really helped me turn things around and really have the best year of my life, both personally and in business. So that is eliminating distractions. I have a picture of an iPhone here. While this is not my actual iPhone, it's very, very similar to the way mine is laid out, although I have many more pages of apps, or I did, than this particular phone did. And this shouldn't have come as a surprise to me, and it shouldn't have been something I had to learn at 40 years old. But it really was. I started assessing how I spent my time throughout the day, and I found I was checking Facebook a lot, checking Messenger a lot, playing games, all these sorts of things. So I eliminated that. I uninstalled most of the apps on my phone, and I'm down to one page, and it's just essential stuff that I really need, or the ones that Apple won't let me get rid of. And that's about it. Now, that wasn't the only distraction. I keep Facebook closed most of the day, keep all my social media closed, my email, and I check them at specific times. That's helped a lot. I'm not 100% great on that like I need to be, but even making the effort a little bit has improved it a lot. And I found that those extra 2 or 3 hours a day really, really helped me turn the corner. So think about things that you do throughout the day. Think about how you spend your time, maybe even journal it a little bit, and start eliminating shit that you don't need. And part of my language, but that's what it is, shit that you don't need to be doing, and go from there. So I think this is a really valuable one. Again, I know this isn't anything groundbreaking, but I bet you would be surprised if you really take an honest look at yourself and your business. I bet that you would be surprised at some of the ways that you waste time. So that's the first one. The next one is I learned to focus less and less on competitors and just worry about my customers and how I can be of service to them. Now, obviously, this is the way it should be anyway, but for whatever reason, people in internet marketing and SEO in particular really like to focus on what other people are doing. And I got caught up in that a little bit. I'm not as bad as some folks about it, but I was constantly being asked, what do you think of this tool? What do you think of this person? This person says this. What do you think of that? And I just realized that wasn't helping me help my customers anymore. So I just started taking more time and listening to them and not worrying about what anybody else is doing. That's not to say you shouldn't watch other people to potentially learn things from them, both from what they're saying and what they're doing. But that said, your focus shouldn't be on the gossip or the thing that this person did, or the way that this person is just trying to get attention, or anything like that. Just focus on your customers. Make the best product or service that you possibly can for them. Keep making it better, and everything else will fall into place. Focusing on what your competitors are doing doesn't get you anywhere. So that was the next one that really helped me turn things around. Another one is team building. Basically, the new philosophy I have in my business, both Superstar, SEO, and Legit, is that anything that I have to do more than once, I shouldn't be doing myself. As late as, I want to say November of last year, I was doing literally every single thing in my business myself, and I plateaued a little bit. I'm not going to lie. I got to a point where I was doing very well, but I wasn't getting more. I wasn't growing. I wasn't doing more. And the reason for that was I was doing too many things myself and not, I don't want to say outsourcing, but not building a team. Now I have a large team. I have a development team, I have a support team, I have an SEO team. And the only things I really do are figure out ways to bring more money into the business. I focus on getting ads and marketing and advertising, things like that I'm not ready to give up, but I may even outsource those at some point. But overall, this was really groundbreaking for me. It freed up so much time, allowed me to get so much more creative, and it kind of ties back into eliminating distractions. But building a team is really key. Now, some tips that I would give on that are the two things you want to look for are skill and culture. And by culture, I mean a lot of employees just take a job to get a check. I mean, ultimately, that's why anybody takes a job. But you want to find someone who's genuinely excited to be doing what you're doing or doing what you're doing in your business and literally wants to make it grow and isn't just there to punch a clock. They start at 9, they leave at 5. Find people that are really, really want to help you grow, nurture that quality in them, and then identify what they are good at, give them more of that, figure out what they're not so good at, and find somebody that is and give it over to them. But most importantly, anything you have to do more than once, you need to get somebody else to do it for you. You don't need to be working in your business. You need to be working on your business, if that makes sense. So team building was really, really key for me. The next one is work on what makes you the most money. Or I should phrase that differently. I started focusing on what made me the most money. That's partly why I haven't been putting out the kind of content that I used to with the Asks Me Anythings, however that would be, the YouTube videos, the Instagram posts, and things like that. Not that those things don't have value, but that isn't where the bulk of my revenue came from, and that's not what grew my business. And as a matter of fact, like I said at the beginning of this, the last YouTube video I made was in August, and from August till now, at the end of December, as the best months my business has ever had. Now, that's not to say I won't make videos from time to time, but this trying to make 2, 3 a week was just too time consuming, and the ROI just wasn't there. So figure out what you do that makes you the most money, and just do that. Like, I know a lot of people will spend time, answering their support tickets and crunching their numbers and doing all this like filler work. And that stuff needs to be done, but that goes back to team building. Get people to do those. And you need to just focus. I decided that I needed to focus on what made me the most money, and it absolutely worked. Now, again, I don't want that to come off as that other stuff was meaningless and I didn't enjoy it and it's not valuable to people, because I'm still going to do those things. But I'm going to do them in a more methodical and well thought out and well timed way, to where that they still provide the same value, but they don't become my whole life, if that makes sense. So figure out what you do that grows your business and makes you the most money, and you're going to really start to thrive. That's what worked really well for me. So focus on what makes money. The next one, this one is huge. Figure out who you need to listen to and who you need to ignore. For me, I decided to listen 100% to my customers and my critics. Now, critics and things like trolls and haters, those are different, much as I hate overuse terms like haters. The people that are just going to complain no matter what, or just going to insult you, ignore them. By critics, I mean people that say, this feature is crappy, you should fix that. They don't always put it in ways that make you feel good, but you need to listen to what they say and analyze it and see if they have a good point and improve it if it's not great. That's not to say you have to do everything every critic says, but you need to listen to and at least evaluate the validity of everything a critic says. I know that's tough. I know if you build something, you get an ego about it. This was a struggle for me, and you are proud of it and you don't want to listen to what anyone else says, but every little thing like that that they tell you is going to make your product better, make your business better, and help more people. And those should be your real goals in your business and really in your life. The same kind of thing applies to your customers. Like, for example, I don't even want to call it a course at this point, in Superstar SEO Academy, the comprehensive learning and development system that myself and my fellow coaches have put into place, there were things that people kept asking for that had never occurred to me or I didn't necessarily think were needed, but they really wanted them and it really helped them learn and improve their experience. So I added them, and not only did I make those people happier, I was able to use that to sell to other people and continue to grow it, help more people, make more money, and so on. Everyone else you need to ignore. When somebody gives you advice, one of the pieces of information you need to evaluate is, are they qualified to give you that advice in the first place? You know, everybody has an opinion on what you should do with your business and your life. That's not to say that it's even poorly intentioned, but you need to figure out if they have the credibility to offer the advice that they're offering, and if they don't take it out on them. Just politely say thank you and move on. Sometimes you're gonna take their advice, and it's gonna send you down the wrong path. So, evaluate what your friends, family, and people that don't know the inner workings of your business say. And if they aren't really qualified to say it, then just say thank you and go on to the next thing. So I know these are kind of all similar, but there's a real fine line between customers, critics, and then everybody else. So when someone has some credibility, listen to what they say, evaluate if it's worth doing, and then if it is, implement it, even if you disagree. I know it's going to be hard, but that's important. So learn to do that. So the next thing is to think long term and build assets. A lot of people, and this is a real struggle for a lot of people, but they will give away tomorrow in exchange for today. But what you really need to do is think about where your big goal is, and then reverse engineer what it's going to take to get you there. And this is kind of turned into what I think you should do. And I'm sorry that I'm phrasing it that way, but really this is what I learned and what I'm doing. So hopefully it benefits you. And I'm sorry if I'm coming off as preachy, because that's not the goal. Anyhow, think where you want to be in 10, 15, 20, 50 years. Figure out what it's going to take to get there and reverse engineer that. Don't sacrifice that by, having a sale here and there to get a little bit extra money. Figure out the one long-term goal and work toward it, and then build some assets. By assets, I mean the problem with a service-based business, whether it's an SEO agency, whether it's, whatever, is that you're not building any assets. Figure out something that you can build that you can either sell off and get a nice exit out of, or something that will continue to make you money for years and years and years. These are, it just depends on what business you're in. If you're in SEO, it could be software, it could be sites that you own that generate revenue, whatever it is. Think about building assets and how they play into your long-term goal. Don't just build an asset to build an asset. Figure out the long-term goal, figure out what it's going to take to get there, and then build the assets to get there. So this is what really helped me turn the corner, because now I own a platform. I have a couple pieces of software coming out. I have a community. I have things that will continue to work for me, and they were getting me to my big goal, which I'm not going to reveal publicly just yet. But think long term and don't trade off tomorrow for today. I think that that's kind of a key to business in general. Now, the SEO lesson that I learned that was most useful to me, I'm going to actually have to dive into the computer to demonstrate a little bit, but that was getting back to basics. We get so tied up in all these great tactics, and there really are some really advanced tactics out there, but we tend to ignore the simple stuff because either we think we already know it, or it's become so commonplace that we don't do it as effectively and we don't sharpen our sword enough to really get good at it. But what I learned and what really helped me rank a lot of sites this year was getting back to basics. Mostly I'm talking about on-page SEO and competition analysis. And I'm going to give you an example here in a moment, but it seems like a lot of people have gotten away from it. They want to make these big controversial statements, or maybe they want to build these. My friend Scott makes this great analogy with these 7 things that it's really, I can't even do it justice. It's just they want to build all these Google stacks and all these other things that they do work, but if you get your on page and your basics right, you don't have to do most of that stuff, and you're going to be more evergreen and long term. And I had kind of gotten away from that. I had gotten into techniques and things like that. But I made the adjustment, and like almost overnight, I started seeing a difference. So I'm going to show you what I mean by that in just a second. Okay, so we're here in my computer at Google, and I don't know any of these sites or have any clients in this city or industry or anything like that. I mean, I do, but not for this example keyword. But we're looking at the term Charleston electrician. That's a city in South Carolina. It's a medium-sized city by our standards. And anyhow, the way I would do my on-page in the past is I just kind of had a mental checklist, H1 tag, 1% keyword density, meta titles and description, and that's it, pretty much. I didn't really give it much more thought than that. Outbound links and a video sometimes. But what I started doing was, first of all, that wasn't working for me. I was getting stuck on page 2 a lot with a couple of particular sites, a couple of sites in particular. And then once I talked to someone else and I figured it out through some testing, I started to see a lot of improvement. So I did more testing and things improved. So the thing and it shouldn't have necessarily been a realization to me, but it was, because I'd gotten, like I said, I'd gotten away from the basics, So I started doing site reviews for those people that are in my academy, and I was realizing that they were kind of doing the same on-site that I was doing, and it wasn't working for them as well as it used to either. So I figured there's got to be a key to this. There's certain sites that are winning. So what I started doing was taking the top 5 to 20 sites that were already winning, that were by winning I mean ranking on the first page or the second page, and kind of analyzing what they were doing to see what was working. Now, when I did that, I disqualified stuff like Yelp, Home Advisor, Angie's List, authority sites like that ranked just because Google, I honestly think, is in cahoots with them, but that's neither here nor there. And I just looked at regular websites, and then what I would do is just go through and analyze what they were doing. And again, I don't know any of these businesses. If this is your business, please forgive me. But I would look for their keyword and see how many times they had it, how many times they had it in the H1, how many times they had it in their meta title, their meta description, how much text they had, what their keyword density was, all these things. And I started analyzing what was winning rather than using some arbitrary number like 1% keyword density, 1H1, some list of things that somebody made up in 2007 that were what you do for SEO that I had just taken for granted and not really improved upon, So I started doing that, and then I would just go through each of the top 5 to 10 to sometimes 20 results and see what they were doing, and then kind of emulate it. And that usually was enough to get me to low page 1 or upper page 2. To get this part right, a lot of the times you're going to rank all on your own, and it's going to stick a lot longer. So all you then have to do is go through and create a brand. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit in a second as well. So what I would do is just create a spreadsheet, and I'll show you what I use. So what I was doing when I was doing the site reviews is I would create a spreadsheet like this and just kind of go through each of the top 5 to 10 sites and plug in the information of what I found. The keyword, then the number of times it appears, the amount of text, all these different things. And then I would take an average of those and try to emulate that. And then, obviously you adjust it for the situation. But, if there's one that has 100 and one that has 1 and the rest have 25, whatever. I don't know if those numbers shake out, but I wouldn't just take the average as a hard number. I would look at what made sense based on all the top 5 to 20 appearances and then optimize my site that way. That worked out really, really well for me. I know a lot of people want to make this even more complicated and get hundreds and hundreds of variables, but I found that there's about 10 or so that mattered for me. And I would plug those in, and I would adjust them on the site, and that would almost always, if I was stuck on page 2, that would get me up to page 1. If it was a brand new site, I would usually debut on page 2 or page 1, depending on the keyword, and the difficulty and things like that. So that was kind of what I would do. The only problem with that was it was really, really time consuming and kind of a giant pain in the ass. So I'm actually having a tool developed that's going to handle that for me. How we talked about building assets and long-term things, I'm going to have I'm in the process, and I'll talk more about that some other time, but I'm building a tool that'll handle this for me. But basically, I'd gotten away from thinking about SEO in a way of what works and doing that, as opposed to just taking some outdated checklist and kind of going through that and calling it good. This one thing made the biggest shift in my SEO out of anything I did in 2018. Like I said, the whole point of this was getting back to basics, figuring out what was working and emulating it. It's so simple that I'm, even now talking about it, I'm frustrated with myself that I got away from it, but that's what works. Look at the sites that are winning, both their on page and the links coming into them, and just emulate that to the best of your ability, and you're going to go far. That was the big breakthrough for me. And then after that, I would just do the basics of building an online business. And what I mean by that is, setting up Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, formerly Google+, YouTube, all these things around it, your citations, and maybe sprinkle in some Web 2.0s and some other things to establish your site as a business and reward it, and have Google reward it because it's a business, not just a website. So getting back to basics with on-page was really, really key. And then same for link building and brand building. But, it's not to say you shouldn't try all these other techniques, because they have their place and they work, and I do some of them too. But really focusing back on this really helped me turn the corner. So that list isn't necessarily comprehensive of everything I learned in business in 2018, but it's really I think those are the big ones that really helped me have the best year of my life. So I know that was kind of long, and I know some of that was either very elementary or even boring for you, and I'm sorry for that if it was. Hopefully you got at least one thing out of it that will be beneficial to you, that you can implement into your business and see some growth from it the way I have. So that's what I got for you today. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave them in the comments below. Subscribe, notify, all that stuff. Thank you for hanging out with me this year. It's been a great year. Next year's going to be even better. I hope you feel the same way, and I'll talk to you again soon. Take care.